Did you know that Ukraine, this country, has some of the worst English language skills in all of Europe? Education First, a company that produces a ranking of English language skills as a second language across the globe, put it in its second lowest category out of 5. So the question is, what are you going to do if you come to Ukraine, you move here for say 3 to 12 months a year, and you do not speak the local languages, which are Ukrainian officially and Russian is widely spoken in the country? You are going to need a strategy to overcome the language barrier because it is quite significant here. That's what we're going to be diving into today in this Tip Thursday with me, Connor Klein. Bayekele. So the first strategy that you can employ to overcome the language barrier here in Ukraine is to learn the local language. Duh, you might be saying, Connor, well, that seems obvious, but I'm not saying that to be facetious. I'm saying that because it is basically the first strategy. But of course, if it were that simple, then we wouldn't need this video. So what I always say to my clients, or if it's consulting call or someone on one of my online programs or a client in person, is only learn the local language. Here it's going to be Ukrainian, obviously it's the national language of Ukraine, and Russian is most commonly spoken in a city like here in Odessa. Only go and learn it if you're planning to spend a lot of time using the language afterwards so that you get a return on your investment. Because if you're coming here just as a tourist, maybe once or twice a year for a week, then it doesn't really make sense to learn Russian and invest all that time. Say for Odessa, if you're going to spend 2 weeks a year, then it's a lot of effort to make in order to be able to speak the language, probably only to a very basic high beginner level realistically within a year. I say that as a big language geek. Actually, before I had this channel focused on lifestyle here in Ukraine, I used to have a language blog, in fact, about learning language. I learned a lot of languages, more than 10, mainly entirely Indo-European, so language like French, German, Spanish, which I know a lot of Americans, for example, or North Americans, they tend to learn as their foreign language in high school. So compared to learning Spanish as a native English speaker, I would say it's going to take you 3 times as long in terms of time to learn Russian or Ukrainian. So think about it. If you're planning to spend 3 to 12 months a year here for quite a long time period, then it does make sense to go and learn Russian or Ukrainian, or both. I think that you need to invest twice a week, maybe an hour, so that's 2 hours a week, into learning Russian with a tutor to get to like an A1, maybe approaching A2 level. So basically you're going to be able to do the basic stuff in Russian, and that is very important. Obviously you're planning to spend a lot of time here, as I said, maybe buy a property in Odessa, but if not really a good option for you to go and do that. So the second strategy for overcoming the language barrier that you can use here in Ukraine is simply to rely on English. So what is that going to mean? Well, if you don't want to invest in learning Russian, or you just feel like you're not going to spend enough time here to justify that, then of course you can have more of a touristic experience, in the sense that obviously in the city centers, as I said, you can use English in the restaurants, menus are going to be in English. You can do very basic things like go to the airport, probably the Uber works, for example, unlike in the past, you just have to hit a button, so you're going to be fine with those kind of things. Now, if you're going to stay longer and just rely on English, as I said, it's not Central Europe, so you're basically going to design a social circle that's probably going to be just expats or local Ukrainians who speak English, which is a very small minority of the population speak good English. I mean, the other thing that you can do is, of course, find English language groupies. People want to practice their English. They will gladly hang around you for the free language lessons, but that is a perk. Maybe a lot of chicks also who are younger will be into that, practicing their English, and it's a good opportunity for you to tutor them. One big downside with that, of course, is the scammers, because the scammers target primarily foreign men who don't speak Russian. They won't invest their time basically trying to scam someone who speaks Russian, because they will just figure out they're not naive. If they're not fresh off the boat, they can understand everything going on around them. So you're gonna have to figure out probably a solution to that. Vet the girls extra super carefully, but it is possible to live here without learning the local language and just using English. But you're gonna have to think very carefully about how you're gonna structure all that over the long run, especially if you're spending more than 3 months here, more than the touristic experience. It's going to be a bit limited, but it is doable for sure. Got a little bit of a photo shoot going on there in the background. You can see in my viewfinder, always a common sight here in Odessa. So the third strategy you can employ, it's kind of a little bit of combination of the first two, which is basically to hire someone who's going to take care of your language needs, so an interpreter basically. And they can also double as your assistant, very common. Get a local assistant here, it's pretty cost effective. But basically that is a way in the short run for solving everything, because well, most things, unless you're doing something quite intimate where you don't want your assistant with you, obviously going on a date, probably not. But for by and large, all the major issues that you'll have, of course, someone else can take care of them for you. You can outsource that, hire an interpreter. The long-term issue with that, of course, is that you never learn the local language at all. So if you're doing that without doing it as a stopgap, let's say, just while you learn the language, then the difficulty is that you're always dependent on that person or someone else. And over the long term, that's not the best strategy. You want to probably use an interpreter for doing difficult things in the beginning, an assistant, definitely a big fan of that. And then over the long term, learn Russian. It would solve that problem. Also, as I said, you can't really bring them on dates. Having interpreting dates in general, like a lot of those scammy, disingenuous marriage agencies do, it's a complete disaster, because the frame is terribly wrong there, and you're trying to communicate through an interpreter. Bad strategy there. So there you go. There are my 3 strategies that you can employ. Just a small sample of what you can do about the language barrier here in Ukraine. So there you got 3 quick strategies about how to overcome the language barrier here in Ukraine. This is something that I dive way deeper into my high-level consultation group with the other guys in that group. It's called Slavic Utopia Secrets Ukraine. It's for high-level guys that want to spend 3 to 12 months a year here in Ukraine, want to do things like obviously invest in real estate, because there are amazing opportunities here in Ukraine compared to North America and Western Europe. We dive into that. Also, how you're going to get to stay longer than 3 months, because most of us are constrained in the visa free by the 90 days every 180. We dive into that as well. Also, how you're going to build up a business network. Also got you covered on that. And actually, it's not just my 10 years of living either partly or a lot longer as it has been during this quarantine period in Ukraine. It's also the knowledge and experience of the other guys in the group. It's a super amazing community that we've been developing out, and it will relaunch very, very soon. So you need to get in on that if you are interested in spending more time than, say, a touristic trip here in Ukraine. And the way to get notified of when I open it up for enrollment is by being on my free mailing list. There's a link down below. It's a free gift. You'll get my hotspots, like cafes, bars, clubs that you need to hit when you come here to Ukraine, in Kiev and in Odessa. They're covered in that. It's down below. There's a link. You go, you confirm your email, you get the free gift. And anyways, that just makes it basically a no-brainer. And in future, you will get notified when I open up, which is really, really soon. It is officially, I think, the coldest day so far this year in Ukraine. It is about -12 right now, but it actually feels closer to -20. So I'm going to get in out of this absolutely freezing cold. See you very soon in the next video. Do побачення. До свидания from Odessa, Mama, Ukraine.
SAR Experience.